All right, there we go. So we start in Mark 1:21, and we continue from last week. And Doug, if you would read verse 21, just 21, please.
Okay. And they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath, he entered the synagogue and was teaching.
All right, so Capernaum is kind of a neat place. It is, let me get a picture here, located on the northwest portion of the Sea of Galilee. And so can you see the picture of it there?
It's beautiful.
Yeah, oh, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place. And I guess, I'm sure the parking lot wasn't there in the day when Jesus was there. But I wonder if can you see my mouse moving?
Yes, and there's a cat chasing it.
There we go. So this is the synagogue right here. Now it is built over where the synagogue was that Jesus knew. And the original synagogue was made of black basalt. And so it was, I guess, deteriorated pretty quick. And in the 4th century, it was rebuilt, and they used imported white limestone. And so it's really a pretty place. Now, if you look up here, see this round building there?
Mm-hmm.
That's built over or on where Peter's house was. And so this is a nice little museum type facility, and we were able to go into it, and underneath it is it's like an overhang. So it's a nice picnic area down below. So it's really nice. Who knows what Peter's house looked like, but they say that's where Peter was. So he was super close to the synagogue. He was right there. We'll take a look at what the synagogue looks like today. And so it's in ruins, but it's really kind of a neat Roman-looking ruin.
Architecture, too.
Architecture, yeah. So really a pretty place. When we visited there, it was looks like this day, it was raining, but it was totally overcast, so I didn't get very many good pictures there. I didn't get any good pictures. But really a neat place. It's kind of neat to walk where Jesus walked. That's kind of cool, even though
it is very cool.
Even though it's different stone and stuff, but still same place. So the question is, and let me see if I can pull this up, and I'll let you guys. What existed in the Old Testament? The temple, synagogues, or both of them?
In the Old Testament only?
The Old Testament only.
It was just a synagogue, wasn't it?
In the Old Testament?
I say both.
Okay.
Well,
it
would have been.
It was actually just the temple in the Old Testament.
Really?
Let me tell you a story. Gather around. There were no synagogues in the Old Testament, and I wouldn't have known this had I not studied this week. So it's kind of neat. It only mentions the temple in the Old Testament. In 586 BC, the Babylonians took the Jews captive and destroyed their temple. So took them all away and destroyed the temple. There's no place to do anything in, no place for sacrifice, no nothing. So they decided where they were taken. I think they were taken to Babylon. And they decided to do something called synagogue, which means to gather together, which is synagogue.
Together bring.
Gather. That's right. And so they couldn't sacrifice, but they could discuss the written law. And as they discussed the written law, they developed the oral law. We've all heard of the oral law. and it's 600 and somebody help me out. 663, 13? That sounds right. 613 oral laws that really defined what the Pharisees got all upset about most of the time. By the time they got out of captivity, which I didn't look that up, how many years were they in captivity? Was it 70? Don't hold me to that. I want to say it was 70. By the time they got out of captivity, it was just an accepted form of gathering and a place to come together and talk about the oral law. So the institution remained and is an institution to today. So interesting, huh? Aren't you just blown away by those words?
I am, I knew there's going to be homework, but you just kind of, you whipped it on us, Doug. I'm telling you, I wasn't prepared for this. I had a few notes, but you went far.
I looked up the Greek, the root to it, and but I didn't look to see if it actually existed in the Old Testament or anything.
Right. All right, but wait, there's more.
Free shipping.
I knew you'd like that. So the synagogue has a certain structure. Certain people do certain things, and so you have a person called a hazan, which a lot of times our good friend Doug has performed these functions. They keep the scrolls, and there was a wooden ark, and they trim the lamps, and they sweep the floors, make sure it's ready for worship, ready for gathering. Then there was a ruler of the synagogue, and that guy would plan the service, and when there was a rabbi or a scribe in the area, then they would arrange for that person to actually speak, to actually read the scripture and all that kind of stuff. Now, Jesus used that guy to get into all of the synagogues throughout the Sea of Galilee area where he was going on to teach. Later, Paul would use his Pharisaical status to speak at synagogues. Then there were the elders. There's a place for the elders up front of the synagogue where they would sit, and they were called the principal men. There was an attendant of the congregation, and this is the one who would read the Torah and provide the explanation. And this is the role that Jesus would take when he would come around and talk to the synagogues. Then they'd have an interpreter. And you think, why do they need an interpreter? Well, the congregation, the people, probably spoke the language of the Babylonian captivity, which was Chaldean or Aramaic. So the interpreter would interpret the Hebrew being spoken by the attendant who was reading the Hebrew Torah. So there was an interpreter, I guess, if needed. And then finally, there were almoners. So there were 2 or 3 people that were responsible to collect money and help the poor in the city. And so that's basically our benevolence ministry. So you guys are getting your 2 cents worth tonight, aren't you?
I think that's closer to a quarter, I think.
So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. I'm not sure how you can bring that up in a gospel-oriented sharing situation, but hey, you never know.
Well, that everybody there fully understood what they were preaching. Okay. So if someone is there and doesn't understand the language, that's a no-no, right?
Well, I guess they made accommodation for them, though, since they had the interpreter. So
right. I mean, it was important to them. Very structured.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, verse 22, Mr. Kevin, you are next to my right. If you would read verse 22.
And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes.
All right, we see this kind of concept in a few places. I know that it comes up in Matthew 5, I believe, and probably a few other places where he taught with authority and not as the teachers of the law. So the teachers of the law, according to several commentators, Mike Winger, R.C. Sproul, said that the scribes would teach by quoting other scribes or authorities, other rabbis. And Jesus, and so in other words, they'd say, well, this scripture, according to so-and-so, meant this, and this other guy meant this. And so there was nothing real definite, kind of like we do now. We look at other very intelligent people who we respect, and we think, well, they said that it probably means this, but Jesus taught with authority. There was no question, and the people noticed that he taught with authority. This is what this scripture means, and oh, by the way, and that one time he said, and it's been fulfilled in your ears right now. So he taught with absolute authority. It was all about him.
That was Matthew 7:28 and 29.
7:28. So part of the Sermon on the Mount. Yep. Good. Thank you. All right. 23. This is a big one. 23 through 26. And Andrew, you are next, sir.
All right. Just then, a man in the synagogue who was possessed by an evil spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." The evil spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. The people were all so amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? A new teaching? And with authority. He even gives orders to evil spirits, and they obey him."
All right.
And about that time, I'm heading out the door because I'm going to set this one outside a little bit here.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, and it must have been really common because he heals. It mentions he heals later on. He heals a lot of people of, or exorcises a lot of demons, and so it must have been very common. Maybe it's common today. We just don't notice it.
Well, could you imagine sitting there and watching that all come down?
Oh, yeah.
Like going, yeah, this is, this guy's special.
Yeah. And yet you see at the end there where they were all amazed and they questioned among themselves. In other words, they debated. What's to debate? You just saw a guy exorcise a demon, and the demon followed instructions and left, and he's teaching with authority. Well, what's not to believe?
And called him and knew who he was.
Yeah.
Holy One of God.
Yeah. Knew exactly who he was. It does tell us a few things about demons, and we don't get a lot of information about demons, but only that they exist. But it tells us that they're limited geographically. Otherwise, he would have known that Jesus was there. He was obviously surprised and would not have been at that service or at that teaching in the synagogue. He wouldn't have wanted to been there at all. So they're geographically limited. They're not omniscient, omnipresent, anything like that. They do know Jesus without a doubt. They recognize him, like you said, Kevin, and they seem to know what's coming, but they don't seem to know when it's coming.
I agree.
When they're doomed. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So they're very limited creatures, but spiritual and able to possess someone. Now, I think it might have been Skip Reitzig or Mike Winger, I can't remember. One of them said that it's impossible for a believer to be possessed because we have only room for, I guess, one type of possessor. So Jesus followers, Christians, are Jesus possessed, if you will. We are indwelt. There's the word. We are indwelt by Christ. And so we can't be indwelt by anything else. We can get wayward and sin, but we can't be indwelt by a demon.
And so it would be logical then that if the demons do not know when to end, they know how it's going to end.
Right.
So that Satan also
Yes.
Does not know when.
Same situation. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. It's really interesting too. You know, we've all seen these guys on TV. They're exorcising demons or whatever they're doing, and there's big theatrics. You know, yelling and screaming and calling things down and yelling and whatnot. And Jesus did it with the utmost untheatric actions. He basically said, "Shut up and get out." And that was it. Shut up and get out. So, then, like you said, the people noticed, hey, this is different, and started to debate and talk about it, and then obviously started to spread the word. So, Dad, you get a short one, 28, if you would read verse 28, please, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I thought I was going to get out of this.
No.
Okay, did you say verse 28?
Yes, sir.
And immediately his fame spread abroad throughout all the region round about Galilee.
All right. So the people, they might have been debating it, but they were spreading the word. And this was the original social media network. I mean, they were beating feet. Can you believe? So they got quite serious about telling people about that. All right, 29 through 31. I'll take one. And immediately he left the synagogue. Notice immediately. There's another immediately. Just now, immediately.
Mesos.
Yeah, pesos.
Mesos.
And immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew. Now we know that was just hardly down the road. That was a few feet away. And James and John entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever and immediately told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. And the fever left her, and she began to serve them. Neat story. You guys, I've talked about The Chosen, and this is a great scene in The Chosen. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to send it to you in text on GroupMe and in text, Dad. And it's just a great little scene where his mother-in-law is raised up and she goes to work. It's like a Jewish mother. It's really a neat scene. So I'll leave that with you. But why did the people, I should have put another poll here, why did the people wait until sundown to come to Peter's house?
It marks the end of the Sabbath.
End of the Sabbath, that's right. So a lot of them couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't walk that far, whatever the situation was. Didn't want to force Jesus to work on the Sabbath, whatever. So that was probably the reason. Most likely. You're right, Doug.
My book said that.
That's what your book said, huh? You knew that anyway. 34. Actually, we haven't read those yet. We haven't read 32 to 34 yet, have we?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Doug, read 32 to 34.
32, 34. Okay.
Yep.
That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or oppressed by the demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him.
All right. So waited till sundown to wait to the end of the Sabbath so that there could be some real work going on. And notice that he continued to shush the demons. Obviously, they all wanted to talk when they were coming out. So, but he put those down quickly. Why do you think that he shushed them and wouldn't let them continue to verify his existence, his work?
Was it time?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it just, timing is everything, and it wasn't time. Yeah. You want to get that steamroller to rolling, but you don't want it going 20 miles an hour yet. So
Yeah, when you start chucking demons out, you pretty much gaslit it. It's pretty much that thing's on autopilot. You're ready to go. That's just amazing. And you just say, don't even talk to me. Just get and
yeah, absolutely.
it's amazing.
Well, it also says that by doing that, he was also substantiating the authority that had been given to him by his heavenly Father.
By making them hush?
Yes.
Okay.
Showing complete authority over them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I can see that. Yep. All right. 35. Kevin?
And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed.
All right. We see Jesus doing this pretty often, getting off to himself and praying. So Jesus sacrificed sleep to be with his Father. Charles Spurgeon said, look no man in the face till thou, and pardon my speech, till thou hast seen the face of God. Speak thou with none till thou hast had speech with the Most High. Probably a good policy. Probably a good policy. All right, Andrew, 36 through 39.
Can you scroll down a little, Rich? I'm
sorry. I'm on a couple of different screens here. There we go.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah, anytime. All right, Andrew, 36 to 39.
All right. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come." So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons.
All right. So in 37, it seems like everyone was looking for Jesus. So why do you think everyone was looking for Jesus?
Well, they just wanted to be around him. This guy's performing miracles. He's doing, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
They're bringing sick people to him. This is getting around. Yeah. And they have sick people, you have demon-possessed people, and you have people just saying, we've never heard anybody like this. Yeah. And going back earlier, he speaks with authority, unlike anybody we've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think they wanted to be around him?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Why wouldn't they? But one of their main pushes probably was more healings in because that's an impressive thing. So the question becomes, he's already said, oh, we're going to more towns because I've got to preach. So what does this tell us? He said he did the healings and he did the preaching, but he tells us in 38 that the preaching is why he came.
Right.
So it's the priority.
Yes.
But the people at the moment, that preaching's pretty cool, but man, he's doing healings,
Right.
So the question becomes, and I think I've already answered it, but why didn't he just stay there in Capernaum and heal everybody and then move on?
He is setting the groundwork. He's going to each one of these little villages, these towns.
Yeah.
And every time he does that, it just grows and it grows and it grows. And after a few towns, you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Well, he was also sent out to preach the gospel by his father, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
That was one of his father's wants.
Correct. I mean, that's why I have come. That's what he said, that, and at the end of 38, for that is why I came out. So preaching was the deal. The healings were just to get the attention and to verify, hey, what I'm saying is real. What I'm saying has authority. And I'm going to heal, but it's to gain the attention of the preaching, for the preaching.
Right.
It's to verify the preaching. And so even today, we're not going to see healings all the time. Paul wasn't even healed of whatever affliction he had. We're going to see some, especially, it seems like, I've got no data on this, but it seems like you see more and hear more healings in places where the gospel is not, where the gospel needs to be. And so the Lord's still using healings to gain attention to the gospel.
And the apostles were allowed, once Christ left and they were anointed with the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
They even at time to time had, not, I don't think in great, but time to time had that authority also.
They sure
didn't
did. They sure did. Yes. They continued. The apostles certainly did.
And the people were watching the process of demons being cast out, and that was something totally new to them. Mm-hmm. So it's highly possible that there was an entertainment value in that also.
You bet. Yeah. And we see guys try to capitalize on that today on TV. And
yeah.
But now, we always have medical terms, but think about this. Back then in the beginning, they knew it was demons.
Mm. Yeah.
You don't hear that here, do you?
Yeah.
You never hear it. Right. But back then, that's what it was. Yeah. Has that changed, you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. We were in India making a presentation, and there was just a group of people, and there's probably 100 people that we were talking to, and everybody was sitting on the ground. We were on kind of a stage thing, and somebody stood up in the middle of it and just started screaming stuff. I didn't understand what they were saying. They were speaking Hindi, but somebody shuffled them along and got them down the road so that nobody could hear them, type of thing. But was it possession? Maybe. I don't know. It's been just crazy.
And the other thing you have to remember too is back then they didn't have all the medical diagnosis that they have today.
Right.
So I mean, even like back in the day, say Andrew or Christine trying to teach kids in a classroom. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you have these kids that are ADHD or ADD. Okay, a lot of people back then probably would have considered them to be with demons.
Maybe
because they couldn't get them to settle down or pay attention or anything else.
Maybe. But obviously those that Jesus dealt with, if they're shaking them violently, wanting to talk on the way out, they were demons. And Jesus recognized the real situation, obviously. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's good questions we won't be able to answer on this side of the Jordan. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Most likely. So.
I like the way you phrased that.
This side of the Jordan.
All right, Andrew, 40 through 44, please, sir.
All right. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Filled with compassion, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately the leprosy left him and he was cured. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. "See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded you, or commanded for your cleansing, as a testimony to them."
All right. So this one appears different. This healing appears different. It's mentioned separately. It's mentioned after Jesus had left. We don't know if he's at another town or not, but he's somewhere else, and this guy approaches him. And there are some characteristics that are kind of interesting about this guy. Number one, he's sincere. He's reverently kneeling before the Lord. So he's humble. He says, "If you will." He's believing. He says, "You can. If you want to, you can do this." He acknowledges his need. He says, "Make me clean." In other words, "I'm dirty. Please make me clean." He's very specific in what he said, "Make me clean." And it's personal, "Make me clean." And it's brief. He's not this big, long, preachy, blah, 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 blah. He's pretty much straight to the point. So if we pray in regard to somebody's healing, and if we say something to the effect that you're very capable, Lord, if you decide and if you so will, we ask that you would heal so and so. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. What's really neat in what Jesus did is that there's no telling how long this guy had leprosy. And so when they had leprosy, they were shunned. They couldn't be around anybody. And so certainly nobody could touch them. I heard one guy said that some rabbis would see a leper and actually throw rocks just to make sure that they wouldn't come close. But what did Jesus do? Not only did he heal him, but he could have stood off to a quarter mile and said, "Okay, you're healed," and it would have worked. But what did he do?
He touched them.
Touched him. Can you imagine what that meant to that guy? This person actually, this holy rabbi actually touched me and healed me. So then he tells him to go to the priest. Why? Do we know?
To make the sacrifice.
Make the sacrifice.
After.
Sir?
I was going to say after trying to find where it is, but it's going to take me a little while. But after you're around someone with leprosy, there was that prescribed amount of days in the sacrifice or something. And
you're so right on target. You're right on target. It's Leviticus 14.
There you go.
And it lays out a couple of paragraphs there, pretty detailed. And then it goes into, well, if they're too poor to give this sacrifice, then they can do this. And there's a time waiting period, and come back and do this, and then you're clean. And it takes a while. So it was at least 8 days, kind of like you said. And so it's really neat. And I hadn't noticed this before, but Gusick brought out that what this really did was send a message. This guy's is healed. He's going to go to the priest, and the priest is going to be like, "Well, yeah, I saw that you were you had leprosy for the last 25 years and it's gone now. Now they have to go because it had never been done since Naaman the Syrian was healed by Elisha. So this process had never been accomplished. So the priests, Jesus knew they were going to have to go back to Leviticus and reread this and start through this process and recognize that something's different. Something's going on. This has not been done. And I wonder if the Messiah is here, So that was a calling card to the priest. Hey, something's going on. Pretty neat.
He had to go bear witness.
He had to go bear witness. So the Lord set this one up big time and made sure that the message was going to be clear. Now, he also says, see that you don't say anything. So can you imagine being healed after 25 years and not saying anything? The family going, hey, you're all clean. Well, you're not going to go, yeah, it's nothing.
Hard to hold that in.
Hard to hold that in, and the Lord had to know it, but it brought about a tough situation here. That, Dad, would you read 45? We'll finish up the chapter.
But he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter.
Yep. So, and again, I'm not sure where this event took place, but again, it's probably likely not in Capernaum. And the significance again is probably because it hadn't been done since the Lord was moving through Elisha. So those are the big takeaways in that regard. But from then on, he had to stay out of the towns and just preach kind of remotely, I guess. Unless later it says, I think he went into synagogue, so he had to slip in and slip out pretty quick, probably. Most of those situations. So there is Mark 1. What do you think? Comments, questions, rebuttals?